mean, I find it pretty damn cool that even during a pandemic, we can find time to talk about lotion, muscle acidosis, and athletic performance. But before we do, I'd like to introduce our guest for today's show, and it's Jeff Byers of Amp Human. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, how are things in Utah?
Yeah, I mean things in Utah are relatively good, right? Feel fortunate to be in Utah and not in a major big city right now, but also right, the world's turned upside down, and I'm just very thankful that my family and close friends are safe and healthy for now, and the new norm is the new norm, and it is what it is, and don't get to change that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I'm glad everybody is healthy and safe, for the time being, and you can still escape on the trails and get outside when possible. So, but for our audience who do not know you, could you introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, Jeff Byers. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Amp Human. We're a human performance company. We were founded 22 months ago, essentially, and we can get into that. But my background is I played professional football in another life, and am a struggling endurance slash workout junkie now. But I was an offensive lineman. I played at 310 pounds in the NFL. Started a handful of games, was a journeyman offensive lineman essentially, and decided to walk away on my own terms and start what I call Jeff 2.0. But it's more like Jeff point 0.5. Since I'm down 90 pounds from my playing weight essentially, and love endurance and love the endurance industry as well.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a 1/5, Jeff. Maybe that's the number we're going for. But for our audience members, I mean, don't let this guy fool you. I mean, this guy can motor. He can pedal a bike, and like he said, I mean, coming from a professional football player, he's still a big guy. But I don't know when we first met, Jeff, but it was on a bike, and I remember thinking once we start hitting the hills, I'm like, I might not see him anymore. But you were right there, like on our wheels, suffering like a dog, and strong as an ox. So I mean, you can pedal a
Yeah.
bike, man. Must be
uh,
lotion. I don't know.
I like to say that I'm real good at suffering, and that's one of the things I love about right endurance sports, and why I've loved riding the bike. And it's because it's easy on me. Is like you can control your pain cave, and one of the things that I loved about really high end sports was right. It's about how deep can you go, and it's more of the mental game with yourself than it is with the person next to you, because you can take yourself to that pain cave. And for me, like I'm whatever sick individual, but I love the pain cave. It's where I find the most mental clarity, and it's almost like a meditative state for me. So yeah, I do like to pedal. Gravity is not my friend going up, but I do for a 225-pound guy, like I do enjoy riding up hills. Actually, I enjoy riding up way more than I enjoy riding down. I'm not this best bike handler in the world. Obviously, I did another career in my life, and I go downhill, and I'm like, man, I've rolled the dice a lot with head injury and being in quote car accidents on the football field. I play it safe when gravity's on my side.
Yeah, we'll keep on doing that. It's a good way to roll. But as our audience members can tell, I mean, this guy knows his stuff when it comes to athletic and suffering. But let's hear more about Amp Human, Jeff. Tell us kind of the history. Like, where did it all start? How'd this happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a pretty fun story in my mind. So when I retired from the NFL, I got into the finance world, and quickly realized that that is not what I wanted to do with my life, and it was just I'm very much a team guy. I had my MBA and really was driven by building high performing teams, and wanted to take a kind of a entrepreneurial shot at at work. I had a lot of things that were kind of lined up to allow me to do that. And so I joined an early stage biotech around 5 years ago. And that's where I met my co-founder of Amp Human. And so we were collectively employees 2 and 5 at that biotech. And the biotech had developed a really revolutionary technology to transport things across the skin barrier. And part of my job was to see what other industries outside of medical could we go and pursue? Could this technology have applications other places? And so some of your listeners may know us from way back when we were this kind of passion project internal to the biotech as Topical Edge. And that was literally a passion project like skunk works, when it was just like we were trying to see what we had, if there was opportunity there, and all in the background, the biotech was doing and starting clinical work on the pharma side of things and leveraging this tech. And we basically were at a crossroads of what are we going to do with what was then Topical Edge, right? We weren't doing anything meaningful in terms of sales revenue. We didn't really have a team in place, but we had proven out a market and had good traction in some initial places. And there was a real opportunity there. And I was spending, 40% of my 120% time dedicated to this company on Topical Edge. But Erica, my co-founder, and I of Amp Human saw a real opportunity in the human performance space to build a meaningful brand and company, and do so with this technology as a start. And we were really passionate about building businesses and building teams, and we had a lot of similar principles and values that really aligned us. And we basically raised our hands and said, we want to acquire this technology. We want to spin it out and form a human optimization, human performance company, which is what Amp Human is, and really with a couple of pillars that are standing up. But we've always had this big vision of Amp Human being a human performance company, not a lotion company. Like, we have a revolutionary technology, and we're building an Amp Human brand around it, and we'll have a couple products with this same technology in line. But we formed Amp Human 22 months ago when we acquired the tech, and that's when we started to build a team and really push our first flagship product, PR Lotion, to market. And it's been a really incredible journey since then. But we were born out of a biotech company with a really, really revolutionary technology. We're doing something that a lot of people say couldn't have been done, and then they see the research that we have and who we're working with, and get pretty interested pretty fast. So that's kind of the genesis. PR Lotion as a whole is super simple. It gives the body more of a basic electrolyte that you can't take orally. That electrolyte is sodium bicarbonate. It helps you maximize your training, extend your thresholds, and recover faster. Sodium bicarbonate, or bicarb, is what our bodies naturally produce to help buffer the acid, the hydrogen ions within our muscles. And that is one of the limiting factors in our ability to push hard and to recover between interval bouts or breakaways, etc.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to ask you next. And for our listeners, to just kind of like back this little train up is, muscle acidosis, or kind of that feeling of the pain that we get when you're climbing up the hill, going full tilt. That is the indicator of fatigue, right? That is the indicator of you're about to slow down. And the muscle acidosis is something, if we can remedy or call it buffer or reduce, we can do more aerobic capacity. And so what Amp Human is trying to do with the PR Lotion is to solve that issue, right? And the kind of the main thing, if I can even go back a little bit further, the Topical Edge, when you guys did start that, for example, what were some of the highlights of that product, and how did it evolve to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was basically like I call it straight out the lab product. And it's the exact same concept that our current PR Lotion product is. taking sodium bicarbonate, combining it with this technology, and being able to get it in the body in the form of a lotion through the skin rather than orally ingesting it. The Topical Edge product, for those of you that know it, and even up until we relaunched PR Lotion, the version we have on market now, it was rough around the edges. And I always like to say we really cared about efficacy first and foremost, and aesthetics second. And that was mainly because we were playing in the absolute upper echelon of sport. And we knew that we had to see if we could get adoption based upon efficacy, not based upon being pretty. And, people riding in the Grand Tours and playing in Super Bowls and Stanley Cups, like, they're willing to adopt things that are nasty. And Topical Edge and first gen of PR Lotion was nasty. It looked like honey mustard. It smelled weird, right? Like there's some great nicknames that are not appropriate to share too about like what it looked like, and it was you had to want to get more to use it.
Well, can I share some of my
Yeah,
experiences?
yeah,
Okay,
fire.
so yeah, I remember when I first started using some of it. I mean, I was like, God, this stuff. First of all, gross, disgusting, and it's slimy, right? But as you go out and you do a couple hard rides, and you're like, something's working here. Like I can feel that. Meaning I can go longer, push harder, hitting some peak powers. But like I could hardly I could hardly get it off in the shower. Then it started to like stain any light colored like white socks, like my beautiful white Velocio socks would just become like blue and gray, and same thing with the jerseys. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I should keep on using this or not. And yeah, and here we are now, a product that doesn't do that, works magnificently and whatnot. But yeah, the first stuff was pretty rough for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm very thankful to have moved on, and probably many of your listeners tried it at one point and were turned off. It separated horribly, all of these things,
Yeah,
and what we did was when we spun the business out and created Amp Human, we really focused on let's find out how do we make it pretty while preserving the efficacy of the
mm-hmm.
product. And it took a full 18 months to do that, like way longer than we thought. But once we had dedicated resources and understood what we wanted to do with it, we were able to get it to a place. But like, man, when we surveyed our customer base last November when we were getting ready to launch, it was like 80% of the people that had used the product were like, if it wasn't so nasty, I'd use it a lot more. You're like, yeah, no duh.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, so
Okay. Well, cool. So that's the history of the company, and even I'm learning here too about some of the finer details here. But let's dive into the science. So you talked about sodium bicarbonate. What is it about sodium bicarb that works in muscle acidosis or in athletic performance? What's going on?
yeah, that's a great question. So the basis of PR Lotion is right, just like you said, sodium bicarbonate, and bicarb is really, really well known and really well researched. In fact, like the IOC, International Olympic Committee, has said it's like one of 7 things that's proven to work. It's very safe and effective, and it's not banned. The only issue with sodium bicarbonate is you can't take it orally, practically. And I want everybody to remember back to like 4th grade science class. And that's when you make a volcano. And that volcano, you use vinegar and sodium bicarbonate. And sodium bicarbonate is baking soda. And that's what happens in your gut when you take high amounts of sodium bicarbonate. Your gut is
Explosion.
explosions. It's bad. And
Yep.
and you have to be really dedicated or a niche athlete to be able to withstand it. And so so bicarb has been used in endurance racing, not in time trialing, in like the 1,500-meter run and things like that, in shorter distance events where you can have explosions after you compete. But if you're going to go do and be like, well, this, the first part of this 100-mile ride is really hard. I want a couple more matches. Like, you're not going to drink sodium bicarbonate because the last thing you're going to do is crap your pants at mile 20.
Right.
or vomit. Like GI distress ruins all performance benefits that anything could give you, as most endurance athletes know with nutrition, etc. Like you just are really careful with that. So physiologically, what happens? Bicarb is naturally produced in our pancreas. It's the rate limiting factor when our muscles burn energy or produce energy. They create a byproduct, and that byproduct is lactate and hydrogen ions, right? Commonly referred to as lactic acid, but they're disassociated. So lactate, as some of you may know, is another fuel source, and it's actually a good thing in our body to have. Hydrogen ions are not a good thing in our body. It's acidic and is the byproduct and the waste product of energy production in our muscles. So bicarbonate in our blood pulls off hydrogen ions, and lactate travels with that off of our muscles. And when hydrogen ions get pulled off our muscles, they're able to continue to perform and be a little more efficient. When our ability to buffer acid, those hydrogen ions decreases because we don't have enough bicarbonate, our muscle efficiency goes down, acid builds up, and eventually that's the fatigue point that says we have to pull back, rest, let the muscles, right, or let the bicarb pull the excess off of the muscles to go back again. So it becomes a matter of how do we give the body more of what it needs to just function a little bit better. No different than proper nutrition, hydration, and things like that. Bicarb is a natural electrolyte. It's just
Yeah.
we've never found a way to practically give it to people before this.
Yeah, and so all of this, to kind of reiterate some points, is the buffering capacity is a natural thing that's occurring within our bodies anyway, and we've tried to do it oral ingestion before, sometimes with good success, other times not with great success. However, a lot of people listening here, go ahead and check some of your sport drinks too, because most of them will have various versions of sodium and sodium bicarb still in it, just in smaller dosages. So this is a natural process. That's kind of my point. And what Amp Human, what Jeff's talking about here, is they've found a way to do it by bypassing the gut and to do it in an effective way. So, Jeff, my question to you is: has anyone tried this before? Or are you guys the first?
Uh, that's a really good question. As far as we know, we are the only people who've been able to transport sodium bicarbonate across the skin. Um, and right, there are various patents and patents pending around the technology. We were really fortunate, right, that the technology spun out of a biotech. And that allowed a real technology to get in place here, because it did take real science and a real science team to kind of develop this tech. And now the fact that we can get sodium bicarbonate across the skin and it has athletic implications is kind of just what like I said, was this fun passion project within the biotech that was like, holy cow, we can do this really cool thing in sports. And it has massive implications for athletes, kind of across all athletic spectrums, that has allowed us to really make some really incredible inroads in sport and be in some places that most people aren't. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's a natural process. The problem is, like, lots of sports drinks and things have sodium bicarbonate in them, but the effective doses to take orally are grams. And that's when GI issues arise. So, right, when you read the literature about oral sodium bicarbonate ingestion, it's typically zero point 0.3 grams of sodium bicarbonate per kilo that you need to take for an effective dose. And when you're talking about, like, that's not a couple grams, that's 20 grams type of thing, and that's a lot of sodium bicarbonate. Just as an FYI, I would challenge anybody to drink that and see how things go.
Yeah, well, I will unchallenge people because I'll just save them save them the troubles there. But if you kind of back up and zoom out a little bit, it's like transdermal absorption of things. That's pretty cool. That's high tech. That's Marvel Comics type stuff. But so for the nerdy science people, I mean, I think we're perking the ears up. So let's talk more about some of the like the scientists, the people actually developing and studying this stuff. You've got clinical research out there, and can you tell us a little bit more about how AMP is performing in clinical studies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like a good place to start, and just being really upfront, we have good clinical data. We don't have great clinical data. Like that is always a place to start. Like we have not been around that long to have, a whole portfolio of clinical trials behind what we're doing, and we're doing something very, very new and on the forefront, tip of the spear of human performance sports science. So we're still in massive data collection mode and in clinical mode on finding more data on this product and understanding how to best utilize it, et cetera. So I always start with that. And so when we formed Amp Human, we really have three pillars that are really important to us. The first pillar is to be thought leaders in the space. Right. Our goal at Amp Human is to be at the forefront of human performance and be thought leaders in the space. We have a world-class scientific advisory board that rivals some of the best companies in the world. We have, folks from Red Bull and Nike. The guy who ran the Breaking Two project at Nike is actually our VP of innovation and research. His name is Brad Wilkins. We have the top clinical researcher in sodium bicarbonates on our scientific advisory board, Jason Siegler out of Australia. We have a great nutritionist out of the UK who's one of the top guys for the British Institute of Sport. And so we've really said, let's assemble this team to help us think about answering hard questions. And then the second pillar of our thought, being a leader in forefront of human performance is validation in elite sport. And that's, who we work with. And, some of you may know, some of you may not know, like we have great, papers that were written by the LA Rams and the St. Louis Blues about how they used our product and how they use our product today and help them, support a Stanley Cup championship and the Super Bowl run, et cetera. And then it's really this innovation side. And that's where it comes down to the technology that we have. And so to your question of what have we done from a research standpoint and how are we thinking about it? So Brad Wilkins, who's our VP of innovation and research, is really leading this clinical strategy. We had an early study done that was done at San Diego State. We're really proud that it was presented at the American College of Sports Medicine conference, as well as we had a couple of abstracts published alongside it. And basically it was an exploratory study that had some really interesting outcomes, but also raised a lot more questions. And I'm the first one to admit as a non-scientist that I was like, what do you mean more questions? And what I found is that good clinical and applied sports science studies typically raise a lot of questions, and that's means you're doing something unique, et cetera. If you have all the answers, you're probably not pushing the limits. And so we saw three really pretty interesting outcomes out of that study. The first outcome was we saw an increase in blood lactate levels, which is a great blood marker for saying, when you see increased lactate levels, you see that means you are buffering more hydrogen ions because lactate and hydrogen ions or acid travels together out of the muscle into the blood. And I should take a step back. That trial was double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled, crossover. It was a gold standard study.
It was a well-done study. I read it just before this, yeah.
Yeah. It still has a lot of flaws. I'll be the first to point out and wish we'd made a lot of changes to the design, but that's right. Hindsight is 2020 type of thing. And so we saw that outcome. The second outcome was we saw a level of perceived exertion and a lower heart rate at the same effort level, which is very consistent to increasing your ability to buffer. It's a less taxing effort on the muscle. And that's really, really important and very consistent with what happens with oral sodium bicarbonate as well. And the third one, which was one of the most interesting outcomes that we necessarily weren't expecting to see, was we saw a massive shift in delayed onset muscle soreness. And when I say massive, like we saw a 50+% reduction in delayed onset muscle soreness versus placebo, which was really, really not expected. And right, so this was put on PR lotion before this workout session, and 24 hours and 48 hours after, there was a significant reduction in delayed onset muscle soreness. Anyway, so those are the three big findings of that study. And we were really proud of that study as well. And it's kind of the foundation that we've been able to build Amp Human on, and to invest in more research and more clinical, and ultimately spin the company out. So that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, from the coaching standpoint, and even from scientific standpoint, I used to work in a human performance lab and have done some undergrad research myself. But the whole thing, you're trying to prove a thing. You're trying to whatever theory you come up with, you're trying to prove it in the laboratory setting. And I think that with what research I've seen from you guys already, it's like the questions are just popping up, and it's a lot of curiosity, right? And you can poke holes, and you admitted you can poke holes in kind of what you were shooting for, in terms of what you're comparing and all this kind of stuff. But for me, when I read it, I'm like, interesting. You're like, we're not answering the questions just yet, but that's interesting enough. And then you take it to the standpoint of like sodium bicarb's been around for a long time. Like it's safe, it's approved. And for me, that checks all the boxes in terms of something's going on here. It's safe and approved. Let's try it. Let's try it to the N of one. Let's try it to the athlete. Let's try it to yourself, and let's just see what happens. And I think for the listeners, when you come across something like that, be it a sport drink or a lotion or some type of field testing parameter or workout, go ahead and try it. See what happens, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's how we've penetrated elite sport, is exactly how you looked at it. It was like, oh, this is really interesting, compelling data. Like it makes sense. I get the science of sodium bicarbonate. We would love to be able to incorporate it. And then, right, they use it and they have like N of one, N of five, N of 10. And, next thing you know, they have a lot of people using it. I mean, that's how we've broken into, call it half the NFL and half the NHL are paying customers. Like multiple world records have been broken now with PR lotion in kind of the endurance world. You might not know this, Adam, but like we've won $1.6 million in innovation contracts from the Department of Defense, to right.
That's awesome.
For
Yeah,
what we're
really
doing with PR lotion, because we have a pretty big customer base within the special forces, that have adopted it from this is a meaningful output to like they're the elite tactical athletes. And so we've had really tremendous support within the U.S. government as well to really push the limits of what we know further. So you're exactly right. Like your approach is what's gotten us the unprecedented traction within sport.
Yeah, that's fascinating. In my mind, like even as you say that, and you're talking about other sports, my mind's like I have a bunch of other questions that we could ask. But we've hit on the primary topic of increased sport performance and short term, medium term, long term. That's what we were finding in the clinical studies. That's what I've been finding with my own athletes and in my own use of it. But you also mentioned decreased muscle soreness, and you can use this stuff for recovery. So, what can you speak to more about that recovery state? Like, what do you see? Like, what would you recommend when somebody does a hard workout? Should they put it on immediately after their shower? Like, how do you use it from a recovery standpoint?
That's a really good question. So the data that we have on the delayed onset muscle soreness was used pre-workout, and part of the mechanism of action is undetermined on this, but it's the free radical damage. Right, there's the actual right damage that you're doing to the muscle. That's the muscle tearing, and that is exactly what you want to do, right? You want to have the micro tears in your muscle that create some of the soreness that you feel. It's the oxidative damage that happens after and around right, that our scientific advisory board and the other smart people we work on say this is the link that the oxidative damage is super acidic. Maybe you're helping flush some of that oxidative damage out by making a more alkaline environment. And that's really the genesis of it. Now, like the biggest thing we hear anecdotally from athletes, and that's from the very, very top end all the way down to what I'll call like the weekend warrior, the aspirational athlete, is when they do things that they know really well, or they're doing back to back to back days. The comment that they always come back and say is, "I feel better than I should," and that's from guys who have worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France to right, like people I ride my bike that I can keep up with on my bike, right? And so when you talk about using it after, we do have a handful of not a handful. We have a lot of really high-end athletes that use PR Lotion post-workout, right? It ultimately comes down to where's the biggest bang for the buck on PR Lotion, and it's definitely to use before. But if you do, like if you're doing a multi-day stage race or a multi-day biking event or running event, something, PR Lotion has a pretty big impact for using after on just continuing to help you recover. And it's around this alkalizing, man, I can't talk, alkalizing the body and helping remove some of the acidic environment that's created by the oxidative stress. That is what we believe is the mechanism of action. Now, like I said, like we need to understand more and do more work on that. And it is part of what is in our clinical pipeline of things that we want to look at and understand a bit further. And so the best way to use it after, to your question that I just rambled on around, is
it's a good ramble.
It's a good ramble. With old formula, it's really hard to use after. With new formula, I typically say take a shower, put it on after, good to go. Or if you have any soft tissue work that's done, use it in the soft tissue work. It's a double whammy. You can use it as a massage medium. And work that way.
Gotcha. So soft tissue work, do you mean like if you're like even like a self massage or using a scraper tool, or if you have, I don't know, an in-house massage therapist, throw some amp lotion on there or what?
No, exactly. If you got somebody that's willing to rub you down, even better, right? If you're just doing a self massage, et cetera, it doesn't, like, you might as well self massage with that, or just like for me, like I don't have anybody that's going to rub me down. Like my wife definitely isn't, right? And I don't have many friends that are willing to do that either, and I don't have a personal masseuse. So, like for me, I think
Brad Huff to do it. Brad Huff would probably do it for you. I'm just
if anybody knows Brad Huff, I'm sure you would agree with that. But I make sure Brad Huff stays far away from me in those types of situations. Good old Brad. But just put it on, like get out of the shower, towel off, put on a light layer, right? Pull on, your sweats, your shorts, whatever it may be, and you're good to go.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, I'll have to try that. I actually have not done that. So, so you're speaking to the teams and athletes that are using the product, and I've known a little bit. Went on the website and seen some really big names like pro basketball player Drew Holiday. You got pro hockey players on there. You got Ironman champions, pro tour teams. I mean, that's a pretty robust group of athletes, but it's also a very wide spectrum. Team sport, endurance athlete. So you're saying this stuff works across the board?
Right. Yes. Right. It's the basic physiology of it of an athlete are very, very similar. And now, right, like PR Lotion, bicarb doesn't have a role in the very short, high intensity like strength training type things, like CrossFit, 100%. And where like football is using it is not necessarily to extend thresholds. It's the recovery piece that they've seen a pretty big impact, and the consistency of play over time. And so this is where it's okay, bicarb and how are we affecting free radical, et cetera. Like we've seen great evidence within the football space, but right when you think about hockey or basketball, right, it's a bunch of on off, like you know crazy threshold to non-threshold to threshold to non-threshold type of environment, which
Repeatability. That's what it is.
exactly, and that's what bicarb rolling the body does, right? And so, right, bicarb is pulling off that acid when you need it and being less taxing on the muscle, etc. So we haven't like broken into that high end of sport through athletes. We've done it through teams, to be quite honest, and through sports science and the HP side, high performance side of whether it be government or pro sports, and gotten in that way. And honestly, like a lot of athletes have come to us and said, I want to be a part of this. And we're very honored to have some athletes that are investors in our business because they believe enough in our company. And then we just have a ton of athletes that we don't get to talk about that use the product. And part of it is like, because we work with Nike High Performance and Red Bull High Performance, and the guys that run those places are on our scientific advisory board, we have access and the reach of the product within broad-based sport, whether it be right tennis, football, hockey. We've had some pretty incredible people do some incredible things on our product, and that's part of the story that we've done a decent job telling, but we still we haven't done a great job, right, explaining who our scientific advisory board is, and that half we don't give product to the NFL, like they buy our product and they buy it repeatedly. Like same with hockey, like that's for me, like that like you can give anybody free product to use, as you well know, Adam. It's if people were actually willing to buy it, that's meaningful in my business.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is like I know some of the athletes that you're talking about, and when you've traveled around with them too, it's like, hey, did you bring some lotion? Because I forgot mine, and they're actually using it. And also, lotion isn't one of those like cool swag products. It's not like a t-shirt, hat, or a free bike or something that they can use on the podium. It's it's a non-sexy thing, right? But it's also like you have to remember to bring it. You have to put it on. You have to put it on 30 minutes ahead of time. You have to and you actually use it, but it works. And I think that speaks to kind of the efficacy of this product is like when you're traveling with these athletes and they're asking for it, and also there's a little bit of work that goes on, and it's not like a cool, sexy product. I mean, that's, to me, that turns my head from a product standpoint.
It's been like it's one of the greatest things about PR Lotion, but like one of our Achilles heels. Like we're not like we're not a sexy power meter or
Yeah.
cool sports drink, right? It's kind of gross. People typically put on lotion and like in the privacy, like they're not stripping down and rubbing stuff on their glutes in front of cameras and things like that. Like, I've always thought it'd be hilarious to do like the behind the scenes of people putting on PR lotion before like Iron Man, as they're like hiding behind parked cars or in porta potties and like in the gym, standing on top of the toilet, like people, like the stories I hear, like the other thing is like we were kind of this best kept secret. Yeah.
Before you go any further, did you see the Amp Human Instagram story this weekend?
From who?
Oh boy. You ask Mr. Huff to show you that. And for those listeners, we'll make it happen. But there will be, go follow Amp Human and check out some of their stories. We'll make sure that it's in one of their like extended stories. But yeah, that'll be a
Yeah.
nice little treat for you here later on in the week. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like right, we were this best kept secret, and we were an advantage for a long time that people didn't want to talk about. Like even amongst their teams, it was it's like some of the like. All right, can you send this to my wife who's going to see me, on stage 14 of the tour? And it's like, why don't I just send it to the team? I don't want the team to know about it. And
Yep.
you're like,
Yep.
what?
Yep.
Like crazy things like that, or like, hey, we want to work with you. Like, why? I don't want to advertise this product, and we've gotten by that now, thank God. But
Yeah.
but it's also like like what we've done, like right, we're so different, and the routine, and it's getting to that routine and understanding why it's important and for what types of things, and why it's not useful for other types of things. But I do, like, you're exactly right. Like, we get panic phone calls like can you overnight to this hotel? And you're like, dude, seriously? Like, do you have any idea how much it costs to overnight it in Spain or France or wherever? Like, yeah, we can, but like that's not like to send you a bottle of PR lotion overnight across the world is like $300. Like, come on, just a little
Yeah.
planning. But it's become this kind of cultish thing within elite sports that we're really lucky to have.
Well, I'll also have you know I've ran some covert lotion operations across the ocean for athletes as well, right before hopping on a plane. So, yeah, it's definitely what happens out there.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the future of AMP, because I know you got a lot in the pipeline. Can you talk about any of the like super secret stuff that you're doing, or give us some general premise of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think take a step back. Like Amp Human, we do have this revolutionary technology, but we are going to grow beyond this technology through. What's really interesting is through the DoD, the Department of Defense. We've actually seen a lot of pretty cool technologies that we've been asked to help support or acquire, that we're actually going to start looking at a little more deeply as we've gotten more established. And so really, Amp Human as a human performance brand and not a lotion company, we are really starting to make that distinction. And everybody who knows us over the next, we've taken this crazy upside down world as an opportunity for us to let's build Amp Human and distinguish Amp Human and PR Lotion, because they're two different things. PR Lotion is a product that leverages one of our technologies, but we're also going to be able to bring other products to market that help you as an athlete train harder, recover faster. That might not be revolutionary, but we can leverage our knowledge and our scientific advisory board to give the best education around it or create more content. So I think that's one thing. From a research down the pipe standpoint, I might bite my tongue here, but we didn't do anything. Red Bull did a pretty cool pilot study on us in cycling, and we will be sharing that data in the next, God, I hope 2 weeks. It has some really cool implications around the ability to hold breakaway speeds and to do more type of breakaway type things. They tested some really interesting things, and this was all done by Red Bull or helped supported by Red Bull through a university. And excited to share that about PR Lotion. It's just another really interesting feather in the cap of here's some more data and things that we're hearing anecdotally from people and how the product should be working. And then we have we do have a few other products in the pipeline around this delivery technology. I would hope they're on market sooner than later, but for us, having some clinical data behind it's really important. And we were about ready to kick off a lot of clinical data April 1st. Like a lot, like $1 million worth of clinical data and research. And right now, because of the environment we're in, like all clinical research has been put to a complete hold unless it's related to COVID. And rightfully so. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that. We have a kind of in the sports realm, we have a topical nitrates that we have really cool data around. Most of you probably know what nitrates are and what it does, and have probably consumed them orally, etc. We're excited about that. We have a topical zinc magnesium B6, which is much more of a recovery product that we're also excited about in the sports space. So those are the two things that we're working on this technology right now. We have a few more. They're too early to talk about it, I think, honestly, and don't have enough data to think that they work or don't work. But we're pretty confident in both nitrate and our ZMA, and they fit a portfolio nicely around topical. Whereas a nitrate is most likely a race day type product, and a ZMA is a post recovery product that has implications there as well. So those are the two, and then we are really going to expand our product portfolio, and leverage our scientific advisory board and thought partnership at the top to think about what other things can we do in human performance, to move the needle. They might not be revolutionary, like putting bicarbonate in a lotion and getting it into the body. But we are looking at various other things to bring to market, and other technologies. And I will, in the next, definitely in 6 to 9 months, we'll have a couple other things on market that we're working on right now. We're trying to finalize some deal terms and things like that we're pretty excited about.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool, and that's exciting to hear as well, because I think nothing but great stuff coming from you guys. And I would say in summary, I mean, follow Amp Human. Go online, follow it on Instagram. But in summary, keep an eye on these guys, because they're pushing the limits of, I think, what can be harnessed from endurance and athletic performance. But what we talked about today was how we can manage muscle acidosis via sodium bicarbonate transdermal PR lotion from Amp Human. And I suggest everybody just kind of go out and try it. And that's kind of the summary points. But before I let you go, Jeff, I have 3 questions for you, because our listeners are addicted to improving themselves and upping their game. So if you're cool with me asking you 3 kind of in your face questions about Amp Human and PR Lotion, let's do this.
Yeah, let's go. Fire away.
Okay. All right. So if I'm on a limited budget, which days of my training should I use Amp Lotion?
That's a really good question. You should use it on your most intense training days, on the days where you are going the hardest, 100%. So if you have interval days, you should use it on interval days. If you have big hill days, you should use it on big hill days. But if you're just doing base miles, or recovery, etc., would not use it. If you're on a tight budget, would not use it on that. And so it is your hardest days. If you're on a budget, you should use PR Lotion, point blank, period.
Okay. So hard training days and race days. Got it. Okay. All right. So if I order this stuff by the drum, when should I not use it? So in other words, can you overdo it in any realm?
That's a really good question, and the actual research suggests that using sodium bicarbonate chronically has pretty big implications for your capacity to do work. So it essentially allows you to make gains faster. And that's by simply giving the body more of what you need. And I like to kind of compare it to, think about if you went on a training, any training day, and you were dehydrated. You'd have a shit training day. You'd have a bad training day. And that would limit your ability to make a training gain that day. And so what we've done is we removed one of the ceilings that has been holding us back and just allowing you to do more work. So when we have pro athletes that use this 4, 5, 6 times a week and use multiple, sometimes applications a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, you bring up a really good point there. And this is a segue to question 3, but from the coaching standpoint, I will say if you get all the other stuff wrong, all the lotion in the world's not going to help you. Meaning,
Oh,
stay hydrated, be well fed or topped off before you head out for your training program, and make sure you're sleeping. Because if you get those 3 things wrong, yeah, this stuff's not going to help you.
yeah, as you guys all know, there's a huge quiver of arrows, right? And this is just one. And
Yep.
it's right like there are no magic bullets, and PR lotion is not a magic bullet, right? It's not gonna if you didn't sleep, it ain't gonna save you. And if you're not like if you have no nutrition in your body, that's not its role. It's just right. It takes the ceiling off of one of our limiters.
Yep.
But if nothing else is right, that just becomes the limiter, right? If you're sleep deprived, that's your limiter. If you're not properly hydrated, that's the limiter, right? Like it doesn't matter. Your body only goes to where the lowest limiter is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
Yep. Yep. Good point there. Okay. So question 3. Um, do I need to worry? This is a good question. Do I need to worry about other stuff coming through my skin when I put it on? For example, if I put some PR lotion on and I go out for a run or a ride, can I get stuff coming through my skin on the trail or road grime into my skin?
that's a really great question. And we honestly get a lot. That's part of the technology that we have that doesn't pull other things in. And so the technology is essentially an encapsulation technology. So we put bicarb in a lipid-based carrier, and that is what is getting into your skin. It's not pulling in right the bacteria or whatever is on your skin. It's pulling in sodium bicarbonate, and that is the only thing that we've seen. And we've had tons of of uses to date and studies and things like that. We're not pulling in the other substances in there, which is a really important thing. So what we make in the lotion, what is in the lotion, is what is we're transporting. And as many of you know, there's still some residue left on because we only transport so much in. And the other really important thing here is PR lotion gets fully absorbed in about 30 minutes. And so like if you're like you put it on 30 minutes as you're gearing up, like you hit the road, like you can wipe it off and be good to go. Like the residue, like it's not a like, oh, it needs to be on while I train. It just needs to be on before I train.
Perfect. That's super simple. And it hit home to me. I asked Huff this, I think, a while ago, and he's like, nope, AP, the pattern's full. And for me, I was like, yeah, got it.
Yeah.
meaning nothing else can go in because everything else is maximized. So, but
Yeah.
that's really good to know about. You can wipe it off as well after 30 minutes. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like if you're an endurance athlete, right, whether you're a triathlete, a runner, or a cyclist, you should be putting PR lotion on your low back, your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings. Like you should be putting it like most of your surface area being covered should be those big major muscles, right? And you should be having clothes
100%.
over top of that. And triathletes, you can obviously get your shoulder complex for swim and things like that, but it's really important. And what we learn from a lot of people is they don't think about their glutes or your hamstrings. And you, Adam, as a coach, will tell you like so much power comes from those parts of your body as a runner or running or riding a bike. When you don't just think about it. People are like, oh, I put it on my quads. It's like you got to do your entire complex because you're producing acid in that entire complex, and it is a surface area game too. So really think
Yeah.
about where you're putting it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, and clearly, folks, like I'm a little biased here, but I was very anti for a while. I was skeptical about this stuff for several years until there was a very usable formula. So don't get me wrong here, but Jeff, to your point, I tell my athletes if they're going to try it, include the glutes and include the lower back, and they're like their mind is blown by it. And it's like, well, think about it. And then people say, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. And the last thing I'll say, we'll get you the Instagram for you. I did a quick Instagram takeover for Amp Human, and I made sure that everybody knew to put it on their glutes. Let's just put it that way, Jeff, and we'll make sure that you see it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And so, like, my takeaway would be, from these 3 questions is right? If you're on a tight budget, use it when you're doing your most intense workouts. But
Yep.
if you're not on a tight budget, use it aggressively because it has significant advantages to increase your training load over long periods of time so that you maximize your training during that time. No different than all the other key links in your system. And then, right, PR Lotion's safe, like it's effective. We've had a lot of uses. We're not dragging other things in through the skin based upon the knowledge that we have and the data. So
Yep. Yep. No, I love it. That's a great summary. And Jeff, we're rounding to the top of the hour. So if you have anything more, oh, actually, if people do want to follow Amp Human or learn more, where should we steer them on the socials or anything like that?
yeah, our socials are at Amp Human, and that's AMP Human. If you're curious, like amplify the first words, the first letters of that. Our website is super simple, amphuman.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We do have a lot of great information in that, and what I'll tell everybody is like reach out to us on social or info at like we're happy to field questions and whatever, like ask us anything, like any question you have, don't hesitate. We are a small passionate team. We really believe in the community that we've created, and being, I hope you all can tell, pretty genuine and honest about where we are as a company, and what we're trying to do. So please don't hesitate to reach out and make a connection with our people.
No, that's wonderful, and they have good people on board there. So, Jeff, thank you so much for taking time out of your day during crazy times, and you're a busy guy, and for jumping on the Train Right podcast. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.